Hello, welcome back to Dr. Introspect TV, and it's your host, Dr. Introspect, and I'm back. If this is your first time stopping at the channel, if you do like this content, do click the subscribe button. If you are an oldie or goodie, thank you for coming back. And how have you been? So good to have you back. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about the Netflix original film, Moxie. Stay tuned. Okay, Moxie. This movie actually came out a lot earlier in the month of March, and I should have brought it to you much sooner, but as you know, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I am going through another show that I am going to be bringing to you soon. It's 11 seasons long, so I'm getting through it, and the deep dive is going to be one of those really long deep dives, so I'm pretty sure you're going to like it, and just hang on tight for me, okay? And with Moxie, you know that the month of March is Women's History Month, so it's kind of significant for Netflix to choose to launch this film at this time. Just by saying that, you can already imagine that this movie is about female empowerment, and that's literally what it's about. Unlike other movies that try to touch on female empowerment, the other shows or movies are typically suggested, maybe in how the character is portrayed, or maybe the dialogue or the setting or something. You get the inkling that, okay, it's probably akin to female empowerment, but here, this is what it's about. The only other show I know that I can think about that has come out fairly recently that took this approach as well was the Hulu original show Mrs. America, starring Kate Blanchett. And of course, in that one it was more of a biopic, and here we have a fictional story. This story is actually set in high school setting, so coming of age movie. I would classify it along the lines of Kissing Booth 2. By the way, I do have a Kissing Booth 2 deep dive analysis. I will leave the link in the comments below so you can check it out if you want to. But like, I gotta say, all in all, it's a really good movie, and I have to say as well, if you're someone that is kind of sensitive to these topics and you find yourself maybe irritated or whatever by the words feminism or female empowerment, this might not be for you. Although, I mean, I wouldn't know why. It's always a good thing to empower females. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, these people you see here are the people I'm pretty much gonna say are the stars of the show, and much of our analysis is going to be based on these characters. Of course, we have our main protagonist here, Vivian, and Vivian is supported by other good characters here as well. We also have Lucy, and of course her best friend Claudia. Much of my analysis is going to be focused on these characters, so let's get into it. First thing I want to say I noticed in this movie was the whole thing about introversion. Okay, so if you're an introvert, like, give me a thumbs up in this video, or just like drop a comment and just type introvert, okay? And I was watching it and I just felt like, okay, these people are obviously playing to the introvert stereotypes. It was like so obvious. And I'm watching it, I'm also like trying to type the characters. And if you are a fan of like personality typing, you probably type everyone you meet or every character you see on a movie or a show or whatever. So I'm typing them and I'm thinking, okay, why do I have this feeling that these girls are like trying to be portrayed as INTJ characters? Like, I'm feeling that way like in the first like 20 minutes. And then we get into it, and then Vivian says it herself that she's an INTJ and her best friend Claudia is also an INTJ. So I was like, okay. Other times, you know, you have to rack your brain and try and make those guesses, and here they just drop it for you. So if you're an MBTI person and you're really into it, drop your type in a comment below. And if you felt that they didn't really portray the INTJ the way you think they should have been, you can also say something as well. Speaking about types, I do feel like Vivian could also have a possibility for INFJ. I mean, it's not the first time that she's learning about feminism and all these things. You're watching a movie, it doesn't seem like she goes and starts reading feminism books and then she becomes passionate about it. She's always known about these things. However, she becomes kind of activated. It's almost like she's a sleeping agent and then she becomes activated when something happens. And for her, what happened was starting to become aware of the things that are happening around her. Of course, first incident was Lucy. Lucy was actually, like, I would say, someone that kind of gave her the red pill when Lucy told her that Mitchell, who is like the villain in this story, right? Quarterback, athlete, school, favorite, whatever, popular guy, and then also kind of like a jerk. And he kind of harassed her, and she went to the principal to kind of report it, and nothing happened. So that whole incident kind of woke her up to what's going on. And of course there were other incidents, the girl being sent home because she was wearing a tank top, and apparently she can't wear tank tops just because she has a fuller chest, and I'm gonna dive into that whole subject much later. But I did think it was interesting that she became activated when she saw other people being victimized. And I would like to argue that she had probably faced victimizations of her own that she probably perhaps internalized differently, of which I would not understand why she would, because she has known about all these feminism things since. And I think seeing it happen to someone really pushed her in a way that I think INFJs are moved when something happens. Let me know what you think about that. But with the whole introversion thing, I thought it was an interesting angle, a way that you portray an introvert as someone that can actually create change and that can actually have power in some way. Typically, when we hear about people that are leading movements or doing something, they are often charismatic, extroverts, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. More like the Lucy type, the way Lucy is. That's usually what you see. And seeing an introvert as someone that can actually be a voice and do something that affect people in that kind of way is really empowering, especially for introvert kids out there. They probably feel like they don't have the power to make things happen. I thought it was really cool that we had that being portrayed here, because the message here is people have different ways of creating change. You don't always have to do it this way like her mom did. Her mom was an extrovert type of person, kind of like Lucy, and she felt like she was like in her shadow, in that kind of way. And truth be told, introverts have been affecting the world in different ways. Some of the people that create cures for diseases and new technologies have been introverts. Some introverts have written some of the most touching poems, written some of the most inspiring books. So I don't want introverts out there, especially those that are really young and suggestive, feeling like they're less than just because. And it's really easy to feel that way in this world that is really highly extroverted, for you to feel like you're less than. And I thought it was cool to see a different angle for once. Speaking on that, I thought it was also really stereotypical that, the way this introvert would choose to create this kind of change is through, writing and creating those kind of poster things that she was creating. And then it was anonymously done. You can think about so many blogs that you read that are faceless blogs or faceless YouTube channels, and I'm willing to bet, unless it's a gossip channel, of which some people are gossip channels and they're not afraid to hide their identities, but for the most part, Introverts feel as if the message or their content is diluted by their humanity. And it kind of makes sense, and that's why some of them choose to make faceless videos. Some even mask their voice so that you're not looking at them through the lens of their humanity. You're not judging them by what they look like or anything like that. It doesn't water down the content of what they're sharing. It also makes sense for why some introverts prefer to write, because then you don't even have to judge them by their voice, and it's just the content of the message in text form. Of course, people could still judge them by like the font size or the structure of their grammar or whatever, but I thought it was really in line with the archetype of the character that this would be the kind of approach that I would be taking. So I just have to say that I was consistent, and I'm going to give them big ups for that. Second thing I want to talk about is the whole thing about having different ways to contribute to a goal or an agenda. I thought that was a strong theme that was coming here. And of course, the need for you to recognize the importance of synergy. When you talk about synergy, you're talking about how, when they all work together, the output is greater than adding up all the individual contributions when they do it separately. So bearing that in mind, you really see that here. In the group, the Moxie group, there are different archetypes that are there. For example, not to dive right into everyone, but Lucy is extroverted. Vivian starts the Moxie thing and of course is faceless. Nobody knows she's the one doing it, but Lucy has this charisma, she has this drive and energy. She takes it to another level. She's the one that created the Instagram page, and of course it's not surprising that she chose a medium like Instagram, which is very, I would say, extroverted sensing type thing. If you're familiar with the MBTI, she chose a medium like Instagram that is very high extroverted sensing, and that's the approach she used, and she basically just blew it right up. She took that extroverted energy and just really shut it up. She made it like big. Vivian was really operating like at the school, but in the locker rooms and that kind of stuff, and her message would have still gotten out there, but the impact would not have been at the same level as the kind of impact that Lucy was able to bring. So being able to recognize that value is really important. It really tells you that when you're trying to do something, everyone has their strengths, okay? Even as I'm speaking about introverts, there are different kinds of introverts, and INTPs, INFPs, ISFPs, INTJs, they're not all going to be the same kind of introverts. So they would have their own individual strengths and individual weaknesses, just like other extroverts as well. And when you are able to just combine people in such a way that people would make up for each other's weaknesses, you have a really solid team. And we could see that going on a lot with the Moxie. I don't want to forget to mention Claudia, Vivian's friend, her best friend actually, and Claudia had a role to play. I thought it was interesting that even though that Claudia and Vivian were both INTJs, they weren't so similar, and that's really something to bear in mind. People tend to think that all types will be exactly the same level of introversion or feeling or thinking or preferences, which is not always the case. And I do think that the environmental factors that affect how personalities shape really came into play here, because you can see that Claudia is a lot more introverted and a little more reserved because she has a conservative mom, unlike Vivian, whose mother is more liberal. Claudia's role essentially was to dot the I's and cross the T's, and of course enact really good actionable plans. I actually think she's more on the T spectrum than Vivian is. She's more logical and rational in her approach, and we saw that when she came into the team and joined them fully and participated fully, there was a difference in how they were executing the stuff at Moxie. So I thought that was cool. So that's just something for you to take away from this. If you're someone thinking about starting a business, a company, a startup, whatever it is, you're doing a project, think about yourself, think about your skills, and think about the kind of people that can complement what you have to be able to get your vision to where you need to get it to in the best possible way. Some of the kind of deeper issues that are covered here, as you know, this was a very social justice change warrior type of movie. So some of big topics were covered here. For example, females in sports not being compensated as much as men, having that disparity. That's really something that has been going on, in our world. In fact, the likes of Serena Williams have been championing this movement for a long time. Seeing them take that approach here, I thought that was interesting. Of course, Mitchell, the high school athlete that was also harassing, and of course, raping people on campus, was only allowed to apply for this athlete scholarship. And whereas they had like a female sports team as well, a female soccer team that they were actually playing better, they won their games. Apparently, Mitchell's own team that plays football did not win their games, but the female team did win their games, but they weren't getting any recognition whatsoever. And I can just imagine that, you're putting in the time to train, the discipline, eat, train, still go to school, all the things that are required with being a good athlete, and you're not being recognized at all for it, So of course, this is high school, we're not talking about dollar amounts, but it's just a smaller scale about what's happening in the real world. I thought it was cool that the Moxie girls nominated Kiara and rallied around and campaigned for her and all of that, and I think she would have won. She had a good shot at winning. However, we saw sexism get in the way, as well as tokenism get in the way of her winning. And it's not too far from what happens in the real world. They gave him the opportunity to speak in the newsroom at their high school, and they didn't present the opportunity to her. When Vivian asked and inquired why, they told her that, well, she didn't ask for it, you have to ask for it. And she's like, how would she have known to ask for it? And that was important, that was key, because a lot of times women are not in places that they could be because they weren't given the opportunities to get there, so that was really significant. And another huge topic that they really covered here was the whole thing about policing women's bodies, telling women what they can or they cannot wear, and making women of certain body types feel a certain way about their bodies. Like, it's not something you have control over. How full your chest is or how less full it is nothing you can do about it. And these people are like little girls, right? It's not like you work at a company and you're an adult and you've processed all of these. You're still growing. You're still going through puberty. Parts of their bodies you're shaming them for probably just came in like the year before, right? They probably just got their periods and things are happening. They're still adjusting to their form, and you're already making them feel a certain type of way because of what they look like. And I thought, honestly, the word is shame. You're attaching shame to their bodies this early at this age. Like, shame on you. And such things can be very triggering and traumatizing. You've been on this channel with me for a while. I do emphasize on issues that can instigate traumas in people, especially when they are in their formative years. Something like this can really scare a girl. And it's also kind of confusing in a way, the kind of messages they send women. Because on one hand, it's like, if you have a fuller chested body, society is going to sexualize you, even without your permission. You're sexualized. You have a full bottom, you have a full chest, you're sexualized as early as 11. They're sexualizing you without your consent, without your approval. You don't have a say in it, but at the same time, they shame you for it. So the message is conflicting, and it can be very confusing for even grown adult women. We also saw that they addressed the whole concept of rape, And there's a lot of shame attached to it. So it wasn't surprising that the lady that was raped didn't want to speak up, and she had to do it through Moxie anonymously. And it's not surprising because in the real world, a lot of women have always been, for time immemorial, shamed for it, shamed and blamed. There's also the culture of victim blaming, where you blame her. Especially, it's even worse in some West African countries, because then they're telling you what you wore costed. You tempted him. You seduced him, you tempted him, you went to his house at a bad time. There are all kinds of excuses and justifications they use. However, they forget that it's a criminal act. If someone robs your house, you don't tell the person that was robbed that, oh, it's your fault, you left your door open, so we're not gonna prosecute him. I mean, you can tell him, next time I think you should bolt your doors or whatever. But it's not gonna stop the guy from doing time or jail or whatever it is he's supposed to do for the crime he has committed. I don't know why that's different when it comes to people's bodies. I really don't know why that is not something that we look at. Rape is a choice. These people choose to do these things. They choose to commit this crime. And I want you to know, aside from the crime, there is the psychological trauma associated with it. And I think that's why when she was speaking about it, she screamed. She's like, I just want to scream. Because it's just psychologically traumatizing. It's psychologically traumatizing. I have to commend them for was how they explored the whole concept of consent. You see it in movies too, sometimes on Netflix. The guy kisses the girl and then he takes a step back and he's like, oh, I don't know if you wanted me to do that. Sometimes he's apologizing, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I misread, if it's not okay, I'm sorry. I thought that was cool. And I also like that when they were in the car and they wanted to have intercourse, and the guy was like, I want to, but not, I don't want it to be like this, it's my first time. They paused and they had that conversation, and I thought that was really good, because there are a lot of people out here that are adults. They're in their 30s, late 20s, and they've never really had this kind of experience before, where you sit with a guy and most of the time when that scene plays out, it's usually the reverse. The girl is usually the one telling the guy, oh, slow down, oh, I'm not ready yet, oh, I'm a virgin, oh, one thing or the other. And then there's this fear associated with it, because she doesn't know if the guy is going to not be interested in her anymore, or if he's gonna judge her, or if he's gonna shame her. In other high school movies you've seen, he's probably lied and told other guys that they did do something and she's horrible and bad in bed or whatever, as a way to get back at her for saying no. So seeing the roles being reversed here and having a guy say, you know what, let's pause on this, I thought that was cool. It goes to show that it can be the other way. It gives us a different way to look at things. Speaking of Vivian's boyfriend, I thought it was quite stereotypical. I think his name was Seth. I thought it was stereotypical that the only guy that could empathize with what was going on, with the struggles women were having, these young girls were having in school, was someone that was the youngest of 3 siblings that were girls. So he has sisters and they're all older than him, and he said they would make him play with the adults with them and braid his hair and all that kind of stuff, which is typical. I mean, if you're a guy and you have older sisters, you can remember these kind of stories. They make you braid their hair, or they make you help them take down their braids if they're black. So, they make you do chores and stuff. So, and I thought it was quite stereotypical, because most of the guys that somewhat kind of feel some kind of empathy for the struggles of women are often guys that have had older sisters, or they are the youngest of their sisters, and some people say they are the ones to beware of because they know too much about how women are and operate, and they can be dangerous and manipulative. And I found that to be true in some cases, but I don't know why it has to be this way. I don't know why it has to be this way, that the only way a man can have that much of resonance to the female experience and compassion for what they're going through is if he has this sort of background. Just something to mention. Other things, I think, just looking at the movie and how it was set, there was a cultural lens to it, and they did touch on it here and there. I thought it was kind of diverse, and Netflix has been doing a good job at that lately. You see Asians, you see Latinos, blacks, whites, everyone just being portrayed, and it's more reflective of our current times, and I'm always appreciative when I see something like that, because in the real world we have Asian classmates, we have Asian friends, we have Latino friends, we are dating black people. It's more normal. It's normal. It's what's happening today. We don't need to be seeing movies that are set like it's in the 80s, and how are we going to achieve that level of unity if we keep separating ourselves like that? So I'm always gonna commend Netflix for the diversity that they do and the cultural lens they brought into it. I thought it was interesting. For example, the conversation that Claudia had with Vivian when she said, my mom is an immigrant, and I know the sacrifices she had to make to, bring me here and afford me the opportunities that I have. I don't have the luxury that you have. I can't go and starting fires, campaigns, all this kind of stuff, because, this is my only opportunity. I have to go to school, make really good grades, hopefully get a scholarship to go to a really good college, and not do anything that could mess that up. That includes not starting rallies or anything that could get me suspended or spoil my record or ruin my chances at this opportunity, because this is literally sometimes the only opportunity people like me have. And I heard that, and I'm sure a lot of people heard that, and they resonated with it. And they don't have to be Asians to resonate. They could be black, they could be Hispanic, they could be from anywhere, even women as well. Any minority group can hear this statement and just feel like, a lot of times you can't just afford, you just have to keep your head low and keep your head down and just do what you're doing, because this could be your only shot. So that cultural lens and perspective, I've been seeing that a lot in some movies lately, so I do appreciate them for bringing that. And just to touch on a little bit of a mental health aspect in this movie, because I feel like my analysis will not be complete if I don't have at least one section dedicated to this. And right here it's quite brief. It's just on the concept of boundaries, and we saw that here with Vivian's mom, her boyfriend, and Claudia. When Vivian's mom finds out about what Vivian has been doing in school, she comes back home drunk because her friend didn't win the $10,000 scholarship, athlete scholarship, so she's upset about that. And her mom doesn't know this whole thing has been happening like this entire time, and she's having like a really bad attitude at that time. And the mother is like, this is my house, I'm your mom, and look, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're not going to talk to me like that. And I really appreciated that, because when you see parents that are so liberal, people can easily assume that their children are just probably going to be wild and spoiled and stuff like that. But you can see here that the mother has a good way of providing her with just enough level of structure and still some freedom for her to be herself and grow into her own identity. And I thought that was really cool there, and I appreciated that boundary setting, because that's what a parent is supposed to do. Second person that sets a boundary is her boyfriend. When he's at a dinner table with her, and of course she's still upset because her friend didn't win, and all this was happening the same day. And of course, she storms off from the dinner table, has a fight with her mom, and then she doesn't come back to the dinner table, and he doesn't speak to her again when he sees her in school, and he tells her, that's not okay. Like, what would you... And she wasn't trying to apologize or anything. She just thought that things were gonna continue like that. And I thought that was cool. Here's someone that has self-respect and loves himself enough. Like, yes, he's crazy about this girl and he really likes her, and he kept her secret because he was the only one that knew that she was like the actual Moxie person, and he didn't tell anyone that she was the one creating the posters and kind of leading the movement secretly. And he supported her in all of this, so he really likes her, but he's not gonna let her treat him like doo-doo. And I thought the message there was clear, and I just had to come back and sound it off, because I say it all the time. Sometimes people get so caught up in loving someone that they forget to love themselves too. Okay, don't because you love someone, let them treat you like doo-doo and you think it's okay. Alright, moving on to Claudia. Claudia lets her know that, you're a coward. I stuck my neck out for you because you're my friend. And I just really liked that conversation, that level of honesty, and the way that Claudia was able to check her. Like, you're my best friend, at least I stood for something, and I'm not a coward. And, I appreciated that. I like that a lot. I think those are some of the themes that stood out to me the most. And if you have other thoughts in this movie, definitely let me know. I don't want this to go any longer than it is, but I gotta say I really enjoyed this film, and I do recommend it. There are a lot of conversations that I hear, even for people that are not quite familiar with the whole concept of feminism or female empowerment, and they don't want to read a big book yet. This is probably a good entry level. You can get into it, and then from there branch off into other things. And I think that's all I have for you. And maybe before my next video I'll be done with Shameless, who knows. But until then, again, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, or share this video with someone. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. I love you. Bye.